The house was silent, but it was the kind of silence that screamed. I woke to the sound of my own heartbeat, pounding like a drum in the dark, and the faint creak of floorboards downstairs. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and the air felt thick with it, like the moment before a storm breaks. My name is Eli Carter, and I'm 19, living in a sleepy Ohio suburb where the most exciting thing is the annual county fair. My life was ordinary: school, part-time job at the local diner, and a father who preached fire and brimstone at the community church every Sunday. But that night, as I lay in bed, the ordinary shattered. I didn't know it yet, but my father, Pastor Samuel Carter, had done something that would change everything. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor, and crept to the top of the stairs. The living room was dimly lit, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows. There he was, me father, kneeling on the rug, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Across from him stood Marcus Reed, the new guy in town, the one I'd been sneaking glances at for weeks. Marcus, with his sharp jawline and quiet intensity, was everything I wasn't supposed to want. And yet, there he was, in my house at 2 a.m., his voice low and urgent. "Samuel, you can't keep doing this," Marcus said, his words slicing through the stillness. "You can't keep pretending." I froze, my breath catching. What was he talking about? My father's head snapped up, his face a mask of anguish. "You don't understand," he whispered. "This is my life, my family, my faith." I didn't know what they were arguing about, but the raw pain in my father's voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard. Marcus stepped closer, his hand hovering as if he wanted to touch my father's shoulder, but thought better of it. "And what about you?" he asked. "What about who you really are?" My heart thudded. I should have gone back to bed, but I couldn't move. Marcus Reed had arrived in Willow Creek 3 months ago, a mechanic who'd taken over the old garage on Main Street. He was 25, with a past he didn't talk about and a smile that made my knees weak. I'd met him at the diner, where he'd order black coffee and tease me about my apron. We'd talk about music, cars, anything but the fact that I was the pastor's son and he was the kind of guy my father would never approve of. But now, seeing them together, I felt like I'd walked into a story I didn't belong in. My father stood abruptly, his voice shaking. "You need to leave, Marcus. Now." Marcus didn't move. "I'm not the one running," he said quietly. I backed away, my mind racing. What had my father done? And why was Marcus here, in the middle of the night, talking to him like they shared a secret? I slipped back into my room, my thoughts a tangled mess. Sleep was impossible. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word I'd overheard. The next morning, the house felt different, like a stage where the actors had forgotten their lines. My father was at the kitchen table, his Bible open, but his eyes were distant. My mother, Ruth, was at the stove, humming softly, oblivious to the storm brewing. She was the glue of our family, always smiling, always believing in my father's righteousness. I wondered if she knew anything about last night. "Morning, Eli," she said, sliding a plate of pancakes in front of me. "You look like you didn't sleep a wink." I forced a smile. "Just a weird dream," I lied. My father didn't look at me. He sipped his coffee, his jaw tight. I wanted to ask about Marcus, about what I'd seen, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I ate in silence, the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. That afternoon, I went to the diner, hoping work would distract me. Marcus was there, leaning against the counter, his leather jacket slung over one shoulder. My heart skipped when he saw me and grinned. "Hey, Eli," he said, his voice warm. "You okay? You look spooked." I wanted to tell him everything, how I'd seen him with my father, how confused I was, but I just shrugged. "Long night," I said. He studied me, his dark eyes searching. If you ever need to talk, I'm here, he said, and there was something in his tone gentle, almost protective that made my chest ache. I nodded, unable to meet his gaze. The rest of my shift was a blur. But Marcus stayed, nursing his coffee, watching me like he knew something I didn't. When I finally clocked out, he was waiting outside, his truck parked under a streetlight. Need a ride? He asked. I hesitated. My father's voice echoed in my head, you need to leave, Marcus, but I nodded anyway. Sure. We drove in silence at first, the hum of the engine filling the space between us. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Why were you at my house last night? I blurted. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. You saw that? Yeah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. What's going on? He pulled over, the truck idling on a quiet road lined with maple trees. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. Eli, there's a lot you don't know about your dad, he said, but it's not my place to tell you. Then whose is it? I demanded, frustration bubbling up. He's my father. If something's going on, I deserve to know. Marcus sighed, running a hand over his buzzed hair. You do, he admitted. But it's complicated. And it's not just about him, it's about you, too. Me? I stared at him, my heart pounding. What do I have to do with this? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I thought he might lean closer. Instead, he said, You're not the only one hiding who you are, Eli. The words hit me like a punch. I wanted to argue, to deny it. But the truth was I'd been hiding for years, hiding the way I felt about guys like Marcus. Hiding the part of me my father would never accept. And now, it seemed, my father was hiding something, too. Meet me tomorrow, Marcus said, his voice soft but firm. At the garage. I'll tell you what I can. I nodded, my throat tight. As he drove me home, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I thought I knew about my father, about myself, was about to come undone. The next day, the air felt heavier, like the world was holding its breath. I went through the motions at school, but my mind was elsewhere, in Marcus, on my father, on the secret that hung between them like a guillotine. By the time I reached the garage, my nerves were frayed, my palms sweaty. Marcus was there, leaning against a workbench, a rag slung over his shoulder. The garage smelled of oil and metal, and the late afternoon sun streamed through the open bay door, catching the dust in the air. He looked up when I walked in, his expression guarded but soft. You came, he said, almost surprised. You said you'd tell me, I replied, my voice sharper than I meant. So talk. He gestured to a pair of stools by the workbench, and we sat. For a moment, he just looked at me, like he was trying to decide where to begin. Your dad and I, we go back, he said finally. Before you were born. Before he was Pastor Samuel Carter. I frowned. What do you mean? Go back. Marcus exhaled, his eyes distant. We grew up together, Eli. In Cleveland. Before your dad moved here and built this perfect life. We were close. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I stared at him, my mind struggling to process. Close how? He hesitated, then met my gaze. We were in love, he said quietly. Or at least, I thought we were. The world tilted. My father, the man who preached against sin, who called homosexuality an abomination, had been in love with Marcus. I shook my head, disbelief warring with the truth in Marcus's eyes. That's impossible, I said. He's not like that. Isn't he? Marcus's voice was gentle, but it cut deep. Why do you think he's so hard on you, Eli? Why do you think he's always watching you? Like he's afraid you'll turn out like him? I stood, my stool scraping against the concrete floor. Stop it, I snapped. You're lying. My dad would never. He's not the villain you think he is. Marcus interrupted, standing too. He's just scared. He's been running from himself his whole life. I wanted to yell, to tell him he was wrong. But the memory of last night, me father on his knees, pleading, stopped me. I sank back onto the stool, my hands shaking. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you're caught in the middle, Marcus said. And because I see you, Eli. I see how you look at me, how you're trying to be someone you're not. I don't want you to end up like him. My face burned. He was right. I'd spent years hiding my feelings, pretending I didn't notice guys the way I did, terrified of what my father would say. But hearing it out loud, from Marcus, made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. What happened between you and him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus leaned back, his shoulders slumping. We were kids, Eli. 17, 18. We'd sneak out to this old park, talk for hours, steal kisses when no one was looking. But your dad, he couldn't handle it. His family, his church, they were his whole world. He chose them over me. The pain in his voice was raw, and I felt it echo in my chest. So why are you here now? I asked. He looked away, his jaw tight. I didn't come back for him, he said. I came back for me, to face the past. But then I saw him again, and it's complicated. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to run, to pretend this conversation never happened. But another part, the part that had been drawn to Marcus from the moment I saw him, wanted to stay, to understand. Before I could respond, the garage door rattled, and my father stepped inside. His eyes widened when he saw us, his face paling. Eli, he said, his voice tight. What are you doing here? I stood, my heart racing. I could ask you the same thing, I said, my voice trembling with anger and confusion. Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised. Samuel, he deserves to know. Know what? My father snapped, his eyes darting between us. You had no right. Marcus. No right. Marcus's voice rose. You're the one who's been lying to him his whole life. The air crackled with tension. My father's face was a storm of emotions: anger, shame, fear. He took a step toward Marcus, but I stepped between them. Stop, I said. Just stop. They both froze, staring at me. I felt like I was drowning, caught in a current I couldn't fight. I heard you last night, I said to my father. I saw you. What's going on? What are you hiding? His mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time in my life, my father, the man who always had an answer, a sermon, a judgment, looked lost. Eli, he said finally, his voice breaking. I never wanted you to see this. Then tell me, I pleaded. Tell me the truth. He looked at Marcus, then back at me, and I saw the weight of years in his eyes. Not here, he said. Not like this. He turned and walked out, leaving me and Marcus in the dim garage, the silence louder than ever. I looked at Marcus, searching for answers, but he just shook his head. Give him time, he said. He's not ready. But I wasn't sure I was ready, either. The truth was a door I'd been afraid to open my whole life, and now it was swinging wide, whether I wanted it to or not. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again, my mind replaying Marcus's words. You're not the only one hiding who you are. I thought about my father, about the life he'd built, the lies he'd told himself. And I thought about May, about the feelings I'd buried, the life I was too scared to live. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing: I couldn't keep hiding. Not from myself. Not anymore. The days that followed were a blur of tension and avoidance. My father barely spoke to me, his eyes avoiding mine at the breakfast table. My mother noticed the strain but chalked it up to teenage moods and church stress. I wanted to tell her everything. But how could I? How do you tell your mother that your father, the man she's loved for 20 years, might be someone else entirely? I kept going to the diner, hoping to see Marcus, but he wasn't there. The garage was closed, the bay door locked tight. I felt like I was chasing a ghost, grasping at truths that slipped through my fingers. By the end of the week, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. On Friday night, I waited until my parents were asleep and slipped out, biking to Marcus's apartment above the garage. The air was crisp, the stars sharp against the black sky. I knocked, my heart pounding, half expecting him to ignore me. But the door opened, and there he was, wearing a faded t-shirt, his eyes tired but warm. "Eli," he said, stepping aside. "Come in." The apartment was small, cluttered with books and tools, a guitar leaning against the wall. It felt like Marcus lived in, real, unapologetic. I sat on the edge of a worn couch, my hands clasped tightly. "You've been avoiding me," I said. He sighed, sitting across from me. "I needed space. After what happened at the garage, I didn't want to push you too far, too fast." "Push me?" I laughed, bitter. My whole world's falling apart. "Marcus, my dad's lying. You're telling me things I can't even process. And I'm supposed to jest. What? Act normal." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I know it's a lot. I'm sorry you got caught in this." "Then help me understand," I said, my voice breaking. "Why did you come back? Why now?" Marcus hesitated, then stood and grabbed a shoebox from a shelf. He opened it, pulling out a stack of faded letters tied with a rubber band. "These," he said, handing them to me. "Your dad wrote them. Back when we were kids." I stared at the letters, my father's neat handwriting staring back at me. I opened one, my hands trembling. "Marcus, I don't know how to do this. I love you, but I'm scared. My father would kill me if he knew." The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. It was real. My father had loved Marcus, had written these words, had been someone I didn't know. He kept them, Marcus said softly. After he left, he mailed them back to me, said he couldn't carry them anymore. But I kept them. I don't know why. I looked up at him, my throat tight. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't know how," he admitted. "And I didn't want to hurt you. But when I saw you, Eli, when I saw how you were struggling, I couldn't stay quiet." I set the letters down, my mind reeling. What do I do with this? I asked. He's my dad. He's supposed to be perfect. Nobody's perfect, Marcus said. Not even pastors. He's just a man, Eli. A man who's been fighting himself for a long time. I thought about my father's sermons, his rigid rules, the way he'd always pushed me to be better. Was it all because he was trying to fix himself, to hide who he was? The thought made me ache for him, for me, for the years we'd lost to silence. I don't know how to talk to him, I said finally. I don't even know who he is anymore. Marcus moved to sit beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. You don't have to have all the answers now, he said. Just don't give up on him. Or yourself. His closeness sent a shiver through me. I looked at him, at the way his eyes held mine, steady and kind. For the first time, I let myself really see him not just as Marcus, the guy with the answers, but as someone who understood what it was like to hide, to hurt, to want something you couldn't have. Do you ever stop feeling scared? I asked, my voice barely audible. He smiled, a small, sad smile. No, but you learn to live with it. And sometimes, you find someone who makes it worth facing. My heart raced. I wanted to say something, to tell him how I felt, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I leaned forward, just a fraction, and he met me halfway. Our lips brushed, tentative at first, then deeper, like a promise we were both afraid to keep. When we pulled apart, my face was flushed, my heart pounding. "I'm sorry," I whispered, panicked. "I shouldn't have." "Don't," Marcus said, his hand on mine. "Don't apologize for who you are." We sat there, the weight of the moment settling around us. I knew this was only the beginning, that there were still truths to uncover, fights to have, hearts to mend. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. When I got home, the house was dark, but I could hear my father in his study, the soft rustle of pages. I stood outside the door, my hand hovering over the knob. I wanted to barge in, demand answers, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I went to my room and pulled out the letters Marcus had let me keep. I read them late into the night, each one a piece of my father's heart, a piece of the man he'd buried. And as I read, I realized something. I wasn't just angry at him. I was sad for him, for us, for the silence that had kept us apart. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen, alone. He looked up, startled, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. "Eli," he said, his voice hesitant. "We need to talk." I nodded, my heart in my throat. "Yeah," I said. "We do." The kitchen was too small for the conversation we were about to have. My father sat across from me, his hands folded tightly on the table, his Bible nowhere in sight. For the first time, he looked like just a man, not a pastor, not a pillar of the community, just my dad, worn and weary. "I know you heard things," he began, his voice low. "And I know you've been talking to Marcus." I nodded, my throat tight. "He told me about you." "About? Before?" His face crumpled, just for a moment, before he steadied himself. "I never wanted you to know," he said. "I thought I could protect you from it." "From me?" "Protect me?" I asked, my voice rising. "By lying. By making me feel like I had to hide who I am." He flinched, and I saw the guilt in his eyes. "Eli, I didn't know how to be both your father and who I was. I thought if I buried it, if I built this life, I could be the man you needed." "But you're not," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "You're not happy. And you're making everyone else miserable, too." He looked away, his jaw tight. "You don't understand what it was like," he said. "Growing up, being told who I was wrong, that it was a sin. I loved Marcus, but I couldn't live like that. Not with my family, my faith." "So you chose to lie?" I asked, my voice shaking. "To Mom. To me." "I chose to survive," he said, and the rawness in his voice stopped me cold. "I thought if I married your mother, if I built this life, I could make it go away. But it never did." I thought about the letters, the love he'd poured into them, the love he'd turned his back on. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "All these years, you let me think I was alone, that I was wrong." His eyes met mine, and I saw tears there, something I'd never seen before. "Because I was ashamed," he whispered. "Not of you. Of me. I didn't want you to carry that." I wanted to scream, to tell him how much his shame had hurt me, how it had made me hide my own truth. But I also saw the man in front of me, broken and human, and I couldn't hate him. Not completely. "What happens now?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't know. I've spent so long running. I don't know how to stop." We sat in silence, the weight of his words settling between us. For the first time, I saw my father not as a hero or a villain, but as someone who'd been fighting a war I didn't understand. And I realized I didn't want to fight that war, too. That afternoon, I went back to the garage. Marcus was there, working on a beat-up Chevy, his hands smeared with grease. He looked up when I walked in, his face softening. "How'd it go?" he asked. I shrugged, leaning against the workbench. "He's not who I thought he was," I said. "But neither am I." Marcus set down his wrench, wiping his hands on a rag. "You don't have to be anyone but you, Eli," he said. "That's enough." I looked at him. At the way he saw me, I saw mean, I felt something shift. "I kissed you last night," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't regret it." He smiled, a real smile, and stepped closer. "Good," he said. "Because I don't. Either." We didn't kiss again. Not then. But the air between us was different, lighter. Like we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. I stayed at the garage for hours, talking about everything and nothing, letting myself feel what I'd been afraid to feel. When I got home, my mother was waiting. She looked at me, her eyes searching. "Eli, what's going on with you and your father?" she asked. I froze, unsure how much to say. "It's complicated," I said finally, "but I'm trying to figure it out." She nodded, her face soft. "Whatever it is, we'll get through it," she said. "We're a family." I wanted to believe her, but I wasn't sure what family meant anymore. That night, I lay awake, thinking about Marcus, about my father, about the life I wanted to live. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing: I was done hiding. The next week was a tightrope walk. My father and I circled each other, our conversations short and careful, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. My mother sensed the distance but didn't push, and I was grateful for that. I wasn't ready to tell her everything, not yet. I spent more time with Marcus, stealing moments at the garage or the diner, where we'd talk about music, dreams, the future. He told me about his life after my father left, how he'd moved to Chicago, worked odd jobs, tried to forget the boy who'd broken his heart. But he always came back to Willow Creek, like a compass pointing home. "You could have stayed away," I said one evening, sitting on the tailgate of his truck, the stars above us bright and endless. "Why come back?" He looked at me, his eyes catching the moonlight. "Because running doesn't fix anything," he said, "and because I wanted to see if there was something worth coming back for." My heart skipped. "Did you find it?" I asked, half afraid of the answer. He smiled, reaching for my hand. "Yeah," he said. "I think I did." His fingers laced with mine, and for the first time, I didn't pull away. I let myself feel the warmth, the possibility, the terrifying joy of being seen. But even as I leaned into Marcus, I couldn't shake the weight of my father's secret, the shadow it cast over everything. One night, I came home to find my parents arguing in the living room. Their voices were low but sharp, cutting through the walls. I paused at the door, my heart pounding. "You've been distant for years, Samuel," my mother said, her voice trembling. "What aren't you telling me?" "It's not about you," my father said, his tone pleading. "Ruth, please, you have to believe me." "Then who is it about?" she demanded. "Eli. Me. God." I couldn't listen anymore. I slipped upstairs, my chest tight. The truth was a ticking bomb, and I didn't know how long we could keep it from exploding. The next day, I confronted my father again. He was in his study, staring at an old photo of us, me as a kid, him smiling, before the weight of his secrets had settled. "Mom knows something's wrong," I said. "You have to tell her." He looked up, his face pale. "I can't," he said. "It'll destroy her." "And keeping it a secret won't?" I asked. "She deserves the truth, Dad. We all do." He stood, pacing the small room. "You don't understand what it's like," he said. To love someone you're not supposed to. To build a life on a lie. Then stop lying, I said, my voice breaking. Stop hiding. For her. For me. He stopped, his shoulders slumping. I don't know how, he admitted. I thought about Marcus. About the courage it took to come back. To face the past. You start by being honest, I said. Even if it hurts. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something like pride in his eyes. You're stronger than I ever was, he said. I didn't feel strong. I felt scared, angry, lost. But I was done letting fear win. That night, Marcus and I went for a drive, ending up at the old park he'd mentioned in his stories. It was quiet, the swings creaking in the breeze. We sat on a bench, our shoulders touching, and I told him about my father, about the argument, about the truth that was coming whether we were ready or not. You're doing the right thing, Marcus said. It's hard, but it's right. I just want him to be happy, I said. And I want to be happy, too. He turned to me, his eyes soft. You will be, he said. We will be. We kissed under the stars, and for a moment, the world felt right. But I knew the hardest part was still ahead. The truth came out on a Sunday. Of all days. My father stood at the pulpit, his congregation waiting for another sermon about salvation. But instead, he set his notes aside and looked out at the faces he'd preached to for years. I've been lying to you, he said, his voice steady but raw. To my family, to myself, to God. The church went silent, 100 pairs of eyes fixed on him. I sat in the back with my mother, my heart pounding. She reached for my hand, her grip tight, and I knew she was bracing for something she couldn't yet name. I loved someone. A long time ago, my father continued. Someone I was told I couldn't love. And I've spent my life running from that truth, hurting the people I care about most. Murmurs rippled through the congregation, but he didn't stop. I don't know if I can make it right, he said, but I'm done hiding. For my son, for my wife, for myself. He looked at me then, and I saw the man from the letters, the man who'd loved fiercely and lost everything. I nodded, tears in my eyes, and he gave a small, broken smile. After the service, the church was a storm of whispers and stares. My mother pulled my father aside, her face pale but calm. Samuel, she said, we need to talk. All of us. We went home, the three of us, and sat in the living room. My father told her everything about Marcus, about the letters, about the life he'd tried to forget. She listened, her face unreadable, and when he finished, she was quiet for a long time. I wish you'd told me, she said finally. All these years, I thought it was me. It was never you, my father said, his voice breaking. I love you, Ruth. I always have. But not the way you loved him, she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. He didn't answer, and that was answer enough. She stood, her hands trembling, and walked out. I wanted to go after her, but I knew she needed time. Later, I found her in the backyard, staring at the stars. Are you okay? I asked. She shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. I don't know, she said. But I want you to be okay, Eli. And I want your father to be. I hugged her, and we stood there, two people caught in the wreckage of truth. I didn't know if we'd ever be the same, but I knew we'd survive. The next day, I went to Marcus. He was at the garage, as always, and when he saw me, he pulled me into a hug. I heard what happened, he said. You okay? I don't know, I admitted. But I'm trying. He nodded, his hand lingering on my arm. That's all you can do. We talked for hours. About my father, my mother, about us. And when he kissed me, It felt like a beginning, not an end. Months passed, and our house slowly rebuilt itself. My parents separated, not out of anger, but out of honesty. My mother moved to a small apartment in town, and we talked often, piecing together a new kind of family. My father stayed in the house, no longer preaching, but still searching for his place in the world. I saw Marcus every day, our relationship growing in the quiet moments, late night drives, shared coffees, stolen kisses. He taught me to be brave, to live without fear, and I taught him to trust again. We weren't perfect, but we were real. One evening, my father asked me to meet him at the park, the same park where he and Marcus had once loved in secret. He looked older, but lighter, like a weight had lifted. "I'm proud of you, Eli," he said, "for being who you are, for not making the mistakes I did." I looked at him, at the man who'd shattered our silence and set us free. "I'm proud of you, too," I said, "for trying." We sat on the bench, watching the sunset, and for the first time, I felt like we were truly father and son. Not perfect, not whole, but honest. Marcus joined us later, and the three of us talked not about the past, but about the future. It wasn't easy, but it was enough. The silence was gone, replaced by something new, truth, messy and beautiful. As we walked back to the car, Marcus's hand in mine, I realized that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being brave enough to try, to fall, to stand again. And in that moment, under the fading light, I knew we'd all be okay.